In order to analyze what kind of planche program I need to integrate in my own workout at the moment, let's analyze what I have, and then out of that we conclude what I need. So, good news, what I have already is decent amount of muscle. Muscle is always the foundation. If you have no muscle mass, there's very limited potential to develop strength, and then you probably won't be able to learn a top-notch strength skill. So this is always the foundation, and as I'm pretty advanced, I have muscle. Strength, I also have a pretty decent strength level, and when we're talking about strength, we always need to talk about specific strengths, and in that case, it will be a shoulder flexion movement with a straight arm strength element. With that shoulder flexion movement, I am pretty advanced. Straight arm strength at the moment, not too good, not too much strength in here, but that just needs a bit of conditioning. What else do I have? I have muscle memory. That means if I now start to train for planches again, I have the big luck that I had a pretty decent planche already in the past. So at the beginning, I will have a lot of adaptations based on my muscle memory because my body was already able to produce force in those positions. So I'm just more of a quick learner, as it's just reactivating a pattern and not learning a new one. So that's on the good side. And what I also have is a super low capacity. I just told you that my straight arm strength is not very good at the moment, and that is mostly due to a lot of limiting structures. So my biceps is not used to that straight arm position anymore. The whole forearm flexors, the extensors on the ulnar side and flexors, they're not used to working capacities. Also, my protraction, so the serrato is really anchoring me in that position, is also not used to it. It's not a position that I just spent time in and that I needed in my workouts in the last years. So, of course, my training capacity in this position is super, super low. And that means I cannot train a lot, because if I train a lot of planche at the beginning, I would just overload super quickly and probably get injured. So it's very, very important to remember that due to not training it, my capacity is low. And that's also something we will cover in a more complex fashion in the programming course on how to deal with that. So what do I need? If I have muscle already, if I have the strength, if I have muscle memory and a low capacity, I actually just need a ton of specific practice. And how we deal with that low capacity is something I will tell you later, but in the end, that's what I need. Just a ton of specific practice. What's the goal of this whole planche project? That will be a 10-second straddle planche. When I talk about straddle planche, I talk about perfect form. So I want to have a perfect alignment from the shoulder to the hips to the feet. One nice and straight line, smooth protraction, arms fully straight, and just, that sexy straddle planche alignment in perfect balance on the parallels. That will be the goal. But we will have some problems interfering with the planche project because, as you know, I'm a street lifter, and that shall remain my number one priority. So the planche will be a side quest to me, and I will also treat it like a side quest and show you some programming principles in that project in order to make something like that happen without interfering too much with my main priority goals, which is a big privilege that I have. If you remember the slide before where we talked about already having muscle strength, muscle memory, a bit of a history with that lift, that will be possible for me. If you don't have that already, if you're not that advanced, having planche as a side quest is probably a pretty stupid idea. But back to the topic. Priority lift number one, push, will be dips. That's my competition lift. It stays number one priority. So I want to have the planche interfering with it as little as possible. There is always interference because if I need to share my push capacity from dips and bench with a planche, then it takes away capacities from that lift. That's a basic principle of programming that you also learn in the strength programming course. You just have 100% of push capacity, and if we distribute even 5 to 10% only to the planche, there is 5% left here and 5% less here. That's just how it is. You cannot have more than 100% capacity. So yeah, that's okay. That's the trade-off that we're making. But number one priority will be dips. Number two priority will be bench. As I'm not in a competition phase at the moment, I just enjoy to also focus a bit more on the bench press. That's just a personal thing. I don't expect my dip to be boosted, a lot of it. I just want to do that. I enjoy benching. It's fun to me, and it's my hobby, so I want to have it as fun as possible, and bench just makes me happy at the moment. And then number three priority will be planche. And that comes with a few considerations when we're later going to develop a small program inside my program for the planche. The main exercise of this planche project will be banded holds. I will use always the same setup so I can make the strengths of or the assistance of this exercise comparable. That means for the first couple of weeks, we will use the 20 to 38 kg purple King of Weighted resistance band available in our shop, and we will use these high parallettes from pull up and dip. And when you look at the setup, I will try to have the band always exactly above my hips so that the assistance really just goes upwards and does not interfere too much with my hold. And why a super heavy band? Because this is really all about conditioning my technique. It should be as light as possible to still be challenging, but to still allow me to work with perfect technique. So what I want to do is I want to be able to accumulate a lot of holds. So a lot of sets over time with perfect technique, because I don't need to condition my strengths too much. I don't really need that hold to build up any muscle, because that is what comes from my other exercises. So this exercise is really just there to teach me the movement pattern and not to fatigue me a ton. And that's why I use such a heavy resistance band. So band comes on my hips, then go into the position, balance, core is tight, arms are straight, and then finding. And from an intensity standpoint, those holds are around 3 to 5 seconds. RPE, I would say like 5 to 7. When we're just putting this RPE in a sense of like, it was 5 out of 10 hard or 7 out of 10 hard, but you could also have it a bit more practical and work with like seconds in reserve. So RPE 5 would then be 5 seconds in reserve, RPE 6, 4 seconds in reserve, RPE 7, 3 seconds in reserve. So just, I stay away from failure to avoid to accumulate too much fatigue from this. Because accumulating fatigue here in the planche will limit the ability to produce force in the further exercises like dips and bench. Because this fatigue here, especially the central nervous system fatigue that I carry into the other push exercises, will limit my progress there, which will then also, again, limit a bit of my planche progress because, as I said, I just use planche exercises to condition, and I don't use planche exercises for strength or hypertrophy work because that is what the other exercises in my program are already doing for me. The second exercise category that I'm going to use are Zanetti presses. And the reason for that is pretty simple. As I told you, I have a super low planche capacity. So the amount of training my especially passive structures can take very low. So as I'm training on the parallettes, as I know from the past, the limiting factor will be around the wrist, especially for that ulnar derivation movement here. As the planche is pulling me in that direction, I need to counter it, and I always in the past got problems. I was training too much planche on a higher frequency here around the underside of my forearm. And I figured that an easy workaround to still have higher frequencies for planche is that I can use exercises like the Zanetti press or exercises like a straight bar planche, where I just don't have this position, but more a neutral wrist position, and loading more that actual straight arm position, more that Maltese position, which still has a decent carryover to the planche, but it just allows my forearms, especially that side here, to recover. And another reason now why I would choose, in my particular case, the Zanetti press over the straight bar planche holds is that I struggle with my stack, so bringing the ribs down and keeping my hips in a posterior pelvic tilt. That is one thing I'm not very good at, and I also struggle with that protraction movement and really activating that serratus to move that shoulder blade around the ribs. And by having more of a dynamic movement like the Zanettis, this movement will just be practiced more often while keeping that core position and ribcage position that I want. So pretty specific explanation why it works for me. For you, maybe the straight bar planche hold could be a better choice. How you can analyze stuff like that is what you will learn in the strength programming course, especially if you choose the strength programming course with the live calls, because then once a week we're having a session together where we can analyze stuff like that and where we can just talk about it and create the best program for you. So how I will perform the Zanettis is I will go into that hollow body position, hips posterior tilted, and then I try to bring my lower ribs down by activating the abs and especially also the obliques. And when I push the dumbbells up into the press, I try to breathe out to not overarch here, but really keep the ribs down and being able to expand that upper rib cage here, that one, to be able to let that shoulder blade move around and really fry my serratus. And of course the weights will also work my straight arm strength pretty good. So let's go. And really the hardest part for me, as you maybe saw, is really to not get into this relative extended position here, but really stay tight and stay flexed in here, and I really just work from the arms. Priority number one for the planche will be banded holds, 3 to 5 seconds, low RPE average. Then second, Zanetti presses, probably 5 to 7 range, because the higher the rep range will go, the more fatigue we will accumulate. It's longer time under tension. It's more muscle damage, more metabolities that we will accumulate into the muscle. So just recovery times are taking longer. That's why I prefer the lower range here. And then once a week, just to monitor the adaptation process, always at the same day, I will have one set of advanced TAC 90 all in to compare it with the set of today. And we could also just do it with less intensity here, but I think it's just a very nice way of monitoring progress for that YouTube series here for you. And if you maybe want to integrate different skills in your program, or maybe don't want to integrate planches, but front levers, one-arm pull-ups, handstand push-ups, and maybe we're not talking about dips, but an overhead press or other lifts, then you need an individual approach to that. And you just need to learn how to program. And the good news is I will teach you that in my new course, which is called Strength Programming Course. Pretty simple. You can find it in the link in the description, and the whole idea is to teach you everything from zero to the final product, which will be your individualized training program, and I will guide you through every step. You will have weekly live calls with me where we will challenge your program, where we will answer all the questions that occur during the process. And yeah, that's the Strength Programming Course, so make sure to subscribe now.